The nominees, everyone has questions they're asking, not entirely new things. We've had them just not from these particular individuals. But once you get to cabinet, how do you rationalize or reconcile between what your ambition, what your thoughts are versus the manifesto and the promises of the politician in the name of the president, and how you're going now to execute that?
Thank you, Sam. A very interesting one. What your views and what you think and what you would like to is a very good place to start, because that is where the cabinet secretary is going to infuse innovation, creativity, breaking away from the status quo, further motivation. So it's a good place to start. However, in the public sector, a lot of work has already been done and documented by way of either policies, regulations, or legislation, or strategic plans, or in the short term has been commuted to what we call the performance contracts, which are annual. Mm-hmm. So there is already a lot of documentations that exist. When I listen to the nominees, they are all confirming the very issues that the Uhuru cabinet has been dealing with are the very issues they will be addressing. So I would want to urge them to be able to say what they will find having worked and served Kenyans ought not to be disrupted for the sake of being disrupted, because then you take off without losing much time. I would also want to encourage that where they come in with their different experiences that would give more value to what has already been done, be introduced by way of reviewing what is already existing. I seem to hear that in terms of the problem statements, we know what problems are ailing this country. Mm-hmm. We know that it is complaints around, for instance, education sector, the CBC, which gladly is already being reviewed by a task force that the President has put together. So that is going to point the elements where the minister responsible for education may want to bring revisions, not necessarily kicking out, throwing out, and getting started, because then he will have the next 3 years if that was to be the approach to be taken. I hear the issues of climate change being as critical as they were 10 years when we joined cabinet, actually even more critical. So because the instruments of policy and interventions have already been researched, documented, a lot of public participation, a lot of referencing to global good practice, what is this that the nominee, once vetted, what is she going to do with her team, which is already competent for her to take off without necessarily looking back to undo what seems to have been working? Mm-hmm. I seem to be hearing the other cabinet ministers, foreign affairs, again, saying we require to accelerate our bringing in foreign investors, but also facilitating the local investors to be able to invest, to generate the much needed employment opportunities, particularly for our young people. Now, the question would be, Kenya in the last 10 years has made some very monumental progress around ease of doing business within the country. So how does the nominee, Governor Mutua, accelerate the numbers by ensuring that the ease of doing business index continues to improve, as opposed to saying, we're getting started again from a corner that is... So we start from the known. Mm-hmm. Working toward the unknown, and obviously encouraging a lot of innovation. I would want to encourage across the board the cabinet's nominees, ones in office, to think acceleration, because I think, again, within bureaucracies, if you lose time, and get yourself into paralysis as you're analyzing the problems are well known, and you can listen as they articulate them. They actually know, spot on. It is the solutions which would be practical, affordable, sustainable, that perhaps should occupy them at this point in time. A small input into the technical teams who they will find in these ministries, absolutely very competent. The presidential systems gives the ministers a latitude of coming in or identifying private sector or even former government workers to be their immediate advisors. Again, a resource which, if used very well, will bring different perspectives onto the decision-making table, would enrich the decision-making and also the lead time that the cabinet minister may take to lead for them to then bring or infuse that innovation that is hitherto not always the easiest space in big bureaucracies like Kenya.
Mm-hmm. So do I hear you saying that it has to really depend on the initiative of the CS or even the instructions from your president or your deputy president will also be useful in cabinet? What has an upper hand, initiative or instructions? You see,
recall the President Ruto has spoken to Kenyans and has spoken to even these nominees. His manifesto and what he was marketing for the duration for him to earn the presidency is known by all of us. It is some of the issues the nominees are responding to. It is an employment question, it is a food security, it is a climate change issues, it is the hustlers movement and making sure that the lowest, the micro enterprise is facilitated by way of capital. They are known. So the ministers are not going to come and say anything new. They will operate within that framework. But implementation means they are going to stretch some certain things, they are going to shrink some certain things, and they are going to necessarily prioritize. Because recall, the budgets are constrained. The economy has performed in the manner that the nominee is talking about. We are struggling because we have debts to service, yet we have many mouths to feed. The drought has brought in a challenge of food scarcity. We have people starving. We have animals dying. So there is a whole new, if you will, bucket of challenges that they need to address to even this focus on growing the economy. So the two will have to meet at some point. My view would be the following. Take the manifesto of the president that he has used, because that is a promise that is resonating with ordinary Kenyans. Get back and look at the policy instruments and interventions already being implemented by the teams who are currently in office. The handing over notes that the CS speaks about will be speaking much in terms of, on this matter, this is how far we've come, and this is where we intended to go for the remainder of the year. Review that, be able to reprioritize so that then you take off without spending too much time, and then get your innovative or creativity genius for the next financial year, because a lot of commitments have already been done here now. And I then would be expecting, the reason your president is a telephone call away from you as a CS is so that you bounce your ideas in terms of how you see implementation in the short term, in the midterm, in the long term. Mm-hmm. Bounce off your ideas. If he gives a nod, then you're good to just go all the way. If he says, I think we should vary this, because now if you had resources, for example, in the water ministry that was going towards mega projects, he may as well say to you, our focus right now is the 23 counties where animals are dying, and therefore the resources or finances which had been appropriated for the big project should all be redirected to that side, because I have promised this to Kenyans. Yesterday I went to Homa Bay, for example, and I made this commitment. So reorganize your plan so that it meets with what I have given as a commitment. So the issue of communication and feedback becomes very important. Constant, sustained, trust, because when you go to the president and he trusts what it is you're saying, he's likely to say, proceed, agree with you. But he's also likely, in rare cases, if you have not quite processed what you're saying to him, he's likely to say, modify that, let's move in this direction. Mm-hmm. That is where cabinet subcommittees also become important. Because if I'm struggling with a matter that touches on several ministries, it is my business to take the initiative to pick the phone and speak to CS Kobia and say, these are my thoughts. What are you doing in your ministry? Because remember, if I am dealing with issues of climate smart responses, it cuts across agriculture as it does also to the gender aspects that CS Kobia is working on. So consultation at that level becomes so critical, so that then when you come up with your solution, it is all rounded, it has taken care of the environmental issues and the other ministries that would be involved in the implementation, so then it becomes painless when you go to implementation. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I hear CS nominee Alice Wahome saying that hajajipanga, she will do that once she gets to office. It's a ministry that you served in, that is water ministry. Professor Kobia, how long should be the learning curve? So you're trying to understand a ministry so that it can get started. What advice would you give to the nominees once they're approved?
Thank you very much, Sam. Let me take it from where CS Kariuki has left, that we now, all the nominees, understand the grand plan of His Excellency Ruto and Gachagua. Then now, taking it from there, and even the views they bring, that it is okay to feel that I'm not ready, but I will get it. When I get there, I'm keen to learn. One of the things they would like to do is to get really a briefing from heads of various departments in their ministry. This briefing will tell them where the ministry is in terms of delivering on the mandate of that ministry. I would also say that they are going to find themselves multitasking a lot. For example, they'll do a bit of listening, because I think you need to listen to what has been going on in the ministry so that you can build on that. They also need, as they listen, to establish credibility. When you arrive to a ministry, the teams in that ministry look at you and say, what is the brand that you are bringing? What is the credibility? Is this a performance culture? Are you known to stand for anything? So establishing credibility and also labeling expectations. You remember the teams you find in the ministry, they have expectations. You also have expectations. So you must listen to the briefs so that you kind of label expectation, and then you'll get to understand what are the staff needs within that ministry, and how do you need to support? They need to support you. You also need to support them. Remember that some decisions of the cabinet are very critical. In fact, that's what drives the performance within the ministry. Decisions of the cabinet are collectively made by contributions of all cabinet ministers. It doesn't matter if you are not in agriculture or you are in education. When a policy comes on the table of the cabinet, which has been very well processed, researched with the data and information, you make a decision collectively. Then the owner of that policy go to implement it in their ministry. Remember, the technical persons will have worked on that policy, and when they come back for them to implement, then you need, as a minister, to really help them make decisions. It's very common to know that, and you have heard from CS Kariuki, every senior official in government knows what's wrong. The issue is, why haven't you fixed it? That's why you go there as a minister, to listen to some of those problems and then be able to help them make a decision fast enough so that that decision can be implemented. Otherwise, if you are a minister and you are taking time to make a decision and then you find that you will not deliver, if you need to consult His Excellency the President, he also expects you to have researched on the issue. You are giving options, and actually say, out of these three options, this is the best option. Then he will give you his feedback so that you can be able to proceed. That's how you would help the president. Remember, another area I would want really to mention is the interface between a cabinet secretary and a principal secretary. It is very important to understand the clarity of roles. The role of the cabinets is to provide strategic leadership and direction and oversight. And the PA's role is more of the day-to-day administration of the department. And you can be easily a minister who is coordinating 3 or 4 PSs. It is very important for CS to know that in the working relationship and the interpersonal skills you have with your permanent secretary or principal secretary is what really drives how the rest of the members of the team are going to perform. In most cases, it's important for the minister and the principal secretary to stay together and understand their plan in terms of what is the plan for this ministry, the performance contracting, what is the budget, and if it's going to vary, because right now we are trying to rearrange the budget, what are the priorities that need to be supported by the budget? And then what are the procurement plan? And how do you ensure, as a cabinet secretary, as a principal secretary, that you are oversighting, especially the area of audit, so that public resources are not lost. It's not good enough to tell your president that we lost money, but you are the minister sitting in that particular docket. You have an answer give to support. So it's very important that those incoming do more listening. There's no time. They are also coming to work with a president who is very hardworking, who works late. So he expects you to also be equally be able to work as hard as possible. And remember, there may be need. That's why we say CS's role is more of strategic direction, policy direction, and oversight, because you can be Minister of Sports, and next time you are taken to the Minister of Education. Just understand clarity of what the minister should do and what the other technical staff should do is very important.
Ordinarily, how busy is a CS?
The CS is extremely ambitious position, and I think they need to understand that their social life is going to change. Being able to go to social joint is also going to change, because you have targets to deliver. If, for example, where I am now, we try to find if it's gender. You are working around women in leadership, decision-making. You are working about women in socioeconomic development, gender-based violence. And then you have what we call gender development index that measures, are you making progress? Because it's very important for the CS to know, am I making progress? Where is the data and information that is showing? In Kenya, in 2018, Gender Development Index, we were number 95, but in 2022, we're number 57. What is this that we have been able to, and I'm expecting the person coming now to move Kenya from number 57 to number 20.
Right.
So it's very important to measure progress, so that because the contribution of every ministry is what determines the contribution of government and also support it to manifesto. So
your responses describe a very detailed engagement for a cabinet secretary. I just don't know what makes a good CS, whether it's a politician or a technocrat. Let's listen to the views of some of those nominees on what they think about who should be in cabinet.
It is easy for politicians to sell government agenda. We saw it in our first term, in the Jubilee administration. And although you saw in the second term, President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, in their own wisdom, brought more politicians. So, and even now we want to ask, we have asked the Speaker and the House at large to amend the standing orders so that we bring back the question time informally, where members of the cabinet can engage the people's representative.
They just need to amend, and they are here, standing order number 253 on admission of strangers to the House, so that when cabinet secretaries appear, because they are appearing before the people's representatives, they are now. It's a really good way of being accountable, to come and explain what it is that they are doing in their respective dockets, and to respond to other concerns that members of parliament representing the people have about the affairs of the country.
CS Kariuki, when we started this conversation, Professor Kobia said that it would be very important for someone in the position of CS to understand the politics, but also the technical work or professionals' work. And you listen to that, they are sort of proposing, and the president has also said that he's appealing to the two houses to amend their standing orders to allow CSs to go and respond to questions. One wonders, while you are there, who had an easier time? Yourselves from a technical background, or those that come from a political background, from your assessment?
It really depends, Sam, and thank you. What the AG nominee is suggesting is just to broaden what has been obtaining, because we appeared before committees routinely. You know, we appeared before Senate routinely. The only thing is that you're limited to the committee which is attached to your sector. Otherwise, we appeared every time to answer questions, to respond to questions, to be able to say, for example, when we were doing the UHC pilot, every week I remember engaging with the parliamentary committee responsible for health to be able to walk them through, to be able to tell them what are the future plans, to be able to say which are the policy anchors that UHC is going to be you know, dependent upon. So I think what is being suggested is not too new. It is only that they want to broaden so that you appear before the full House. That's the difference. Now, whether that is a better formulation or not, time would tell. But for certain, what has happened when you are removed from the floor of the whole parliamentary house, it means you have people who are doing legislation work which may affect you indirectly as a sector and who have not had the benefit of listening to what it is you're doing. So that what happened is that you are confined to a silo, to a sector, and you know that's quite narrow. So the benefit would be then you are able to carry the entire house when you appear before the house. Now, in terms of engaging the technical or technocrats who we had several of in the Uhuruto government, like what is obtaining right now is that you actually are disengaged from the grassroots communication, conversations, and engagement. Because if you move, say, in water, if you move to County X, your business is more or less confined to your sectoral space, as it were, and then you move in project-based, consultation of a very specific nature, and you're back in headquarters. For particularly the very devolved functions, health, you move in as a guest of the county, you know, because then the facilities are managed by the counties. So there's going to be something positive about this new proposal, because then it means you're able to indirectly engage with the citizens on a routine basis. And so it is a welcome development. Which I would want to think is one of the lessons President Ruto has taken out of the 10 years that he has been within the Uhuruto government.
But also that means more work for the CS.
More work, I have said by saying not necessarily, because I said by saying almost every other week I would personally be either with the Senate committee responsible for health or National Assembly. So it's really, it doesn't change the responses I was going to give if I was asked to talk about UHC as a minister. And I think it just gives you a structured way of engaging and carrying more people. Now, governments lose favor when they are not able to engage the citizens on citizenry on a routine basis. So in a way, from a political point, it is a good move, because then the members of parliament you're engaging with, when they go back to their constituencies, they are more knowledgeable of what's happening around the health space, for example, from the headquarters. They are more knowledgeable what's happening about responses to the drought situation, because then CS Kobe has appeared, and all of them have an idea what is happening, as opposed to them confining and saying, you know, I don't sit in that committee, therefore I would have to come back to Nairobi and consult. You will recall that these members of parliament and Senate would be at liberty to come and sit with a particular CS to be able to ask, so I come from Garissa, I come from Dadaab, my people are dying, where is the food, or what is the government doing? Even if when they're in parliament, they're in a committee responsible for security or for education. So you still have to create that time as a CS to listen to them in your office. And that can also be very expensive. So from a work process issue, this is a more strategic approach for you to take yourself to all of them, all at the same time, listen to what it is you are planning to do as a ministry and as national government, and be able to relay that. So I want to believe this formulation will get Kenyans to be more engaged with their government as they monitor on the promises that are going to be delivered by the government as per the manifesto of President Ruto. Yes.
All right, and shortly we'll be listening to what CS nominee Aisha Juma has to say about the public service docket that one CS Kobia here leads. But before we get to that, we've had a lot of criticism coming from the new regime, should I call it so, but Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua even saying that they are stuck in implementing their plans because they still have CSs that were appointed by the previous regime who were ridiculing, is that correct English, the manifesto, including the bottom-up. I mean, how are you reconciling this? Because you're still holding cabinet meetings, Professor Kobia, under the leadership of President Ruto. So how are you reconciling this at a time that when they're out there, for instance, DP Rigathi Gachagua on Citizen TV is saying that we are where we are because of the misfortune of your work as a cabinet of President Uhuru?
Sam, I think history, I think, is right, because every political administration believes it will do better than the previous one. But I would like us to really kind of confine ourselves to evidence of what did the administration of Uhuru Ruto deliver. And for sure, we can say they delivered on infrastructure, electricity connectivity, delivered on universal health coverage, even if it's not really full. So if you look back and say, what has this government delivered? And we can be able to say, of course, like transition from primary to secondary school, there's evidence what has been done. And I think the only thing that can take us forward is to build on what has been done. And I think that's why His Excellency the President has found it fit to bring the cabinet while we are waiting for the one to be vetted, so that whatever is going on in government now can move on. For example, you realize we will need to reorganize our budget so that we can be able to prioritize and align that budget to what the priorities of this government are. That requires cabinet. We are experiencing severe drought. And when you're experiencing severe drought, almost 7 ministries, education, agriculture, ASAL, interior, they need to come together and respond through emergency response on provision of food. Therefore, what we are trying to say is it is okay, I think, for someone to feel they can do better. That is something that they look forward to deliver better than the previous. I think that's what it should be, that the incoming administration will do better than the one which has been existing. But at the same time, building on what has already gone on before. I'm also feeling this idea of cabinet secretaries appearing in Parliament is good. And all we need to have is more structured so that it doesn't become like a superiority complex. We understand we are in it together, and the Parliament has to do their job, CSs have to do their job, so that when we appear, it's very critical that there's a report that is being discussed, which will come with some conclusions and some recommendation. In the past, it has been not very smooth, but I think now that this government is giving it an opportunity to be more structured, more result-oriented, and also understanding what the MPs do. I remember His Excellency President Uhuru really told us we have to work with members of Parliament, not necessarily in Parliament. Even when they come to our offices, one of the things we are not allowed to do is to keep a member of Parliament sitting there because of the nature of work that he has. Allow me, Sam, to comment on just one critical area that we should not ignore, especially where one has been appointed as a CS who may be contestant and never made it. And now they're in cabinet and they will have to work with whoever won as a governor. That area, the president and also the cabinet minister concerned has to be very sensitive, because sometimes somebody who has become a CS goes to the county, now flying the flag, and they're having that kind of superiority complex and interferes with the work being done by the governor. The best option for me is CSs should work very closely with the governors and the county commissioners, because the development needs for every county, it varies, and that is the only entry where you work, the CS, the governors, and the county commissioners, respecting each other's role, but understanding we have to deliver the same plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's listen to Aisha Jumwa on her thoughts about the ministry that CS Kobe here currently leads.
Na focus katika serikali ya Uhuru Kenyatta ama mtangulizi wangu ni kwamba the focus ilikuwa katika masuala ya gender na mambo ya youth wakati huo, kabla restructuring ya government ministries haijafanyika. So mimi nimezungumza kuhusu mambo na public service, kuhusu wale wafanyikazi ama katika hichi kitengo, the state department hiyo ya public service. Lakini haya mengine unajua watu walikuwa wanaangalia infrastructure, wakakuja na mambo mengi ya mambo na huduma centers, wakakuja na performance contract. So when I talk about transforming the public service, first of all naongea maneno ya performance contracting, you get. So hapo ndipo ambapo kuna utendakazi thabiti, na unajua na ile pia kuachiliwa kwa wafanyikazi. You remember Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua katika inauguration speech yake alisema the public service is demoralized. You get. So hivyo ndivyo vitu ambavyo tunavizungumza. Hawa watu wamekaa pale, wamekuwa stagnant, hakuna promotion, hawakui motivated, they are not trained. Unaona challenges kibao.
Professor Kobia, how much of that is true? Demoralized, demotivated, no promotion, stagnation?
I'm happy that the incoming CS understands there is need for public sector reforms. And within public sector reform, it to understand the critical role of public service. The department is responsible for human resource functions in all the ministries. So they will look at the plan that the government needs to deliver. They will look at the structure. They look at the policies and the procedures. Therefore, the whole issue of if the public service is demoralized or is not, maybe that is what when she comes in the public service, she will be able to find through data, not generalized, that how is public service performing. In my view, public service is still solid. It is true they might not have all that they need, but I would advise that when CSs go to their ministries, let them look at what skills need to be upgraded so that they can perform their roles. They also need to look at how do we improve work environment. Sometimes public servants have not been able to do as well as they could because the work environment sometimes changes and you don't have all the tools that you need. So partly it is true, but that is now the business of the new CS to see how do I improve the work environment, because the critical role public service plays really need to be highlighted. When we say we have the infrastructure, that infrastructure is good. It is our engineers in the public service who draw it, they supervise and implement. When we talk about health, it is our doctors, our nurses. So it is very important to make sure that no government can be better than its public service. So investing in terms of skills, investing in terms of creating a better environment, and also valuing diversity, because all people are not the same, but each one of them has got a certain strength and a certain weakness, which now the CS need to understand this team, how you can lead it to support you so that you can support the president.
Waziri Kariuki, you've also been CS of public service, and every new team comes with its own sort of smaller team. CS may need advisors here and there. How do you source this? Is it from the public service? Is it your friends or political friends who are looking for jobs? How do you determine who is of value? Yet you said loyalty is key.
Well, you can be in both places, Sam, at the same time, really, because if you are coming out to make a difference in the docket that you have been assigned, it is only reasonable you start by looking at the competence of whomever is going to come to, so that they can add value to you. And adding value to you is also interrogating, say, the policies or interventions or strategies that are being put to you and making it easy for you. Effectively, it is your additional brain or hands, if you will. So I would encourage them to look at not using this opportunity to reward people politically or relatives, because then if you're coming to make a difference, then go for the best in class. Go for professionals in the private sector or from wherever else, consulting or the other, or at least that is the experience that CS Kobia and I have had. You will recall that I handed over in 2018 to Professor Kobia. And when I did, because I had a team of advisors who some had even inherited from CS Waiguru then when she was in that office, I did appeal to her to keep them because of the value and the institutional memory that they carried. And gladly so she did. So she didn't have to come and create space because she was coming to make a difference. So, you know, and again, it is not all the dockets that you are going to require these very many additional advisors around you. If you move in and the skill set of the officers and the structure of the CS's office is well structured and you don't need to replace or to come in with anybody else, it's as well. So not everybody, it's not a formulation that everybody has to, you know, to break forth.
And CS Kobia, because we are running out of time, so thousands have applied for the positions of principal secretary. I remember in 2018 or somewhere in between, there are PSs that are appointed without going through the interviews by Public Service Commission. Neither was there a shortlisting. And you speak to people and they tell you that the PSs are already known. The work now that is going on is just to have Public Service interview them and forward the same list to the appointing authority. How much of that is true, so that you understand really how government works and how jobs are given or earned?
Okay, Sam, very quick, let me say the issue of and advisors for the CS is something that should be taken with caution, because you only need where there is a gap. And the role of the CS is to work with the PS. The rule of the thumb is PS works for the CS, because all other staff work for the PS. So unless you establish within PS's establishment, there is a skill gap that is missing, let's say communication, or somebody who can write well, maybe report writing, then you bring that advisor and make sure the advisor does not interfere with the work of the PS or directors. I think that is very important. We had a lot of difficulties where advisors were going to give instruction to heads of department. That is a no-go zone. I think let's confine ourselves. The advisors of the president, you see them staying with the president. The advisors of the CS, minimum, should stay with the CS, so that the PS is the one who drives the day-to-day administration of the department. Therefore, PS are not yet known. That's why there is need to advertise. But Public Service Commission and got a role. I think the reason why the Constitution decided PSs needed to be recommended by PSC, it is assumed majority of the PSs will come from serving civil servants. Why? Because they are the one who understand the structure and what is required to serve in government. Therefore, that's why the Public Service Commission, even without interviews, so long as you have submitted, you have expressed interest, you have given your CV, they cannot analyze and decide in this list of 300, I think the president can get the 49 that he requires. So let me tell Kenyans, the PSs are not known. At the same time, when PSs are appointed, it's like CSs, Kenyans don't have to say who is that one, because they should be competent. They should be people who have already been able to have track record. And I think right now they are just waiting for PSC to give the list.
But Prof, at a time that the Deputy President is saying that Mount Kenya region has been greatly rewarded in the nomination of CSs, and you're yet to name our PSs, and they will come. And at a time there's that suspicion that you can't get that job unless you're connected, unless you lobby. And this I'm saying because I've heard it from a senior politician in the new regime. So how does it work? Or how should it work?
I don't think for PS it should work like that. I think the issue that it is known who is going to come for this position, no. But I think when you give these names, there is a discussion to find who is the most competent, who has the best character, integrity issues, and you'll be able to drive the department. Therefore, the issue that is very common in many cases you hear in Kenya, when a job is advertised, people have this perception, somebody is known. No, those who have applied have confidence that they can be chosen just because their work speaks for them. I think that is very important. So the issue that the reason why you hear the slot of 22, that is very few to give a face of Kenya, or regional representation, or ethnic balance. That's why this administration is telling us, when we bring in the principal secretaries, when we bring in the ambassadors, then when you look, because that's what the Constitution demands, we should see the face of Kenya. So, of course, sometimes you can be the best candidate, but because maybe you are represented by the face of Kenya, I think sometimes you can be left out. However, let me underscore, in selection of permanent secretaries or principal secretaries, meritocracy is number one. Because the president also wants to deliver. So you not just give somebody because he's a politician who he knows, but has no track record of delivering in the public service. A few can come from private sector as a way of ejecting maybe some creativity, but normally they are not more than 10%. 90% is from serving public servants who understand, who make the critical role of public servants who serve government. That's why you find even when the government the administration is new, government is able to continue because of the existing public servants who know how government is transition and how government is ran. So I would advise from my view, it must be meritocracy, it must also be competency, it must be track record of these public servants.
I hear you. CS Karaoke. So remember, in the term that you served just before you left, there were CASs, Chief Administrative Secretaries, and the High Court said that they were unconstitutionally in office, and therefore Public Service Commission now has been asked to call for public participation. Eventually, they may remain, but a different format that will have to be competitive recruitment. But from your experience, how does it work so that, because the president and his deputy have so much work to reward people that supported them on the trail. And here you are, you need CASs who are competitively recruited. I'm not saying that politicians are not competent, but there's a chance that you might find people who are more competent than them in terms of how they present themselves. So how do you work the system to ensure that you're able to get the best, but also paying back on loyalty?
You know, Sam, in life, everything is about balance. You know, here you have a president who's coming and having to carry 47 counties on his shoulders and project his concern. He has to deal with the ethnic groupings. He has to deal with the commitments and promises that he made while on the campaign trail, and it was long. What happened is that the second cycle of the Ruto government, President Uhuru may have realized that out of 22 cabinet secretaries and 42 principal secretaries being the top cabinet, cohort, it wasn't possible to accommodate all the political interests that he had. And that is how come then, in his genius, he brought in the CAS office. But granted, the CAS office has a good and big role to play if it is structured and sat within the law, so that then people are not looking at it being an illegal kind of office. And I say this because one cabinet secretary, one principal secretary, in between, with the additional work of appearing before Parliament as a routine, would merit for additional support at the strategic leadership level, but also the interface with the politicians and interface with the citizens. Now, towards the end of President Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, there was a near breakdown in terms of the citizens knowing exactly what is their government about, what is it doing. Because remember, the cabinet secretary is not at the grassroots to communicate or to engage or get feedback on a routine basis, because they are headquartered and they are viewed to be technical. Mm-hmm. The member of parliament, again, is disconnected to the extent that he doesn't always get to know what the executive is doing. So you can look at this office as being the glue that brings the interface between Wanjiko, Onyango, and Rahab, right at the grassroots level, and what is happening at the executive top level. It is a good thing that the public participation is happening right now for us to be able then to say, if you walk there as a CS, your role is also predetermined. We had a bit of struggle. We had CSs who did not actually have much work because there was no job description given to them. And a lot of them operated on the whims or assignments given by the cabinet secretary. Mm-hmm. So if they didn't agree, then it was difficult for them to actually be of the value that was anticipated at that point in time. Right. So once they get in now with a clear job description, I imagine then the executive will function better. Okay. And again, these are lessons picked from the Uhuru 2 cycles. Mm-hmm. And I think he's just perfecting his delivery mechanism, the systems, and also stamping his engagement with the ordinary people, which again is a good thing.
This is such a consultant's session. You can give us the bill
next time,
based on our rates. Let's take a look at the feedback of what viewers have been sharing with us at Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag to use is Daybreak. Of course, you can continue to do so, looking at what's next for the next CSs. This is Remy Butia. You're saying that President Ruto's administration is committed to empowering people at the base of the economic pyramid. He is keen on establishing a government that supports the political inclusion and empowerment of all Kenyans. Wanyela, you're saying that I would like to congratulate those outgoing cabinet secretaries for the good work they did in the last cabinet. May God bless them. Engineer Lazaro, Ruto's cabinet composition is full of politicians, not technocrats as per 2010 constitution. We're also looking forward to see how Gachagua constitutional office will share some responsibilities with the Mudavadi political office. Okay. Quite a good observation. Okelo Mwalimu, you're saying that in order to avoid wastage of public resources and entrench meritocracy, the law should be amended to compel presidential candidates to present list of CSs and PS nominees before elections. Why recycle leaders if there are millions of qualified unemployed youths? Well, all right. Kipto Ruto, you're saying that the president picked experts to his cabinet. I believe they will work for us, not against us. They would protect us, not hurt us. They will ensure equal opportunity, not just for those with most money, but everyone who is willing to work. And Bobo Tiano, you're saying that you see body language of Honorable Kobia and Kariuki. You don't see politics in them, but professionalism as technocrats. Well, CS Kariuki is now also participating in politics. So I don't know whether she needs to change her body language.
Whatever.
But thank you both. Professor Margaret Kobia, Cabinet Secretary, Public Service. I bet the next time I speak to you, you'll be a former CS, just like Kariuki here. Thank you also for coming, and all the best in your endeavors. I wish you had time to ask you, anyway, what's next for you, CS Kobia, after Cabinet?
Thank you. I'm sure anybody who has gone to the level of Cabinet Secretary, they can be able to find something else to do. For me, I'm coming from academics. Most likely I'll go to academic writing.
Okay.
Yeah, after taking a rest of 3 months.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
All that is set for me. Yeah.
That's interesting. Of course, you know where CS Kariuki is headed. You already spoke about that at the start of the show. Thank you both and for sharing your feedback. We'll see you again tomorrow, 6 a.m. Up next is Sporty Monday. My name is Sam Kituku. Bye for now.